Right, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to our webinar titled An Introduction to Robotics. My name's Russ Borum, I'm Head of Sales for TImpact, and I have the pleasure of taking you through a high-level introduction to RPA, which should take us about 20, maybe 25 minutes, and then we'll have some time at the end of the presentation to answer as many of your questions as possible. Please feel free to ask questions as we go through. Even if I can't answer them immediately, we'll leave some time at the end. And a copy of this presentation will be made available via the TImpact website. So we've got some links in here to some documents like an 8-step guide to robotics, and there's some registration URLs for upcoming events. So you should be able to click on those as we go through. You'll definitely be able to click on them when you get a copy of this document. Okay, so if you haven't heard of TImpact before, we're very pleased to meet you. We've been delivering digital transformation projects since 2004. We specialize in robotic process automation, business process management, decision management, and artificial intelligence. And we believe we're the first company in the UK to have started offering cost-effective robots on a subscription basis. We'll talk a little bit more about that during the webinar. You can also find out more about our groundbreaking work with the NHS, where we've used automation technologies to deliver the world's first cloud-enabled heart transplants. And if you aren't already aware of this project, I really urge you to have a look under the resources tab of our website, as it really is something quite special. So why robotics? Why on the webinar? Why are we here? This quote's from industry analysts IDC, who are predicting that by the end of this year, 1/3 of the leading companies in every industry will be disrupted by digitally transformed competitors. And I think we're all probably familiar with the idea of Uber. Uber's really the poster child for digital disruption. However, we're seeing disruption in all markets, from legal to recruitment, from manufacturing to public sector. So really what I mean by this is the idea that a digitally transformed competitor can come into your market and take a huge amount of market share is really becoming the norm. And one example of this is we recently helped a manufacturing firm. They achieved a 99% reduction in processing time for a back office admin process. A process that originally took a team of 2 people 12 hours to complete is now completed by a robot in 6 minutes. And that's why robots and why the digital transformation is experiencing such a huge amount of tension in the news and wider media at the moment. So just to set the scene, I mean, really digital transformation we found, I mean, it can be very hard and complex, but it really doesn't have to be. We believe that digital transformation can be short, it can be sharp, and it can be impactful. And our free service offerings are really designed with this in mind. So the first stage is to define, if you're planning a more substantial transformation, it's critical that you understand where you're going and how you're going to get there. And we help organizations build an implementation roadmap which is really underpinned by a solid business case. Then we move into implement, and we take cutting-edge technologies such as robotics, which is what we'll talk about today, as well as DPM, as well as decision management and AI, and we really use them to help meet strategic objectives and corporate objectives. And then once we've done that, we measure. So if we can provide real-time performance measurements that help senior leadership understand how to continually monitor and improve operations, then the business will just get better and better and better over time. And that's really where it makes it very difficult to dislodge an organization from being a leader in their market. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about robotics. So what I just want to do very quickly before we get into this, I just want to share a poll to understand, where are you in your journey, and how much experience do you have? So you should be able to see on your screen now. Just a quick question. Take your time. If you can just vote, see where you are, that'll be great. We'll give you about 60 seconds just to do that. Okay. So you can see the results here. So in terms of where you are, majority of people are just looking around. You know, some people who've never really heard of robotics before, and some people who are actively looking at it, and a few people, a couple of people who are actually delivering projects, which is great. I tell you what, we really have fun with robots. We get lots of people asking us how robots will actually get into their offices, where they're going to sit, and we have to take the time to explain that, you know, we're not talking about Terminator-style robots here, but are going to come in and eat your lunch. Really, what we're talking about are small pieces of software that sit on your computer, they sit on a server, or they work from the cloud, and they're designed to replicate the work that you and your teams do today on a computer. And it really is that simple. So where would you use robots? If you have lots of manual, paper-driven type processes, they tend to be sweet spots for robots. So we talk about standardized, simple processes where you can clearly articulate the business logic or business rules. You know, if this happens, then do that, and then do this. That kind of information. If you have staff that are keying information between spreadsheets, you know, getting information from spreadsheets, put it in databases, putting it into CRMs or other web applications, robots are perfect to take away that kind of work and free up your staff. And if you process a lot of information from emails or PDFs or websites, what we call digital data, then robots can pick up that data and run with it. So for example, if you have an invoice that comes into your business by email, the robot can automatically take that data, reconcile it against a set of standard rules to detect fraud, for example, and once that's been validated, put the invoice information straight into your finance systems with zero human interaction. You know, and if you do those kinds of things again and again and again, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of times, robots can free up your staff to focus on more complex and more value-added activities. But of course, look, there's a lot of buzz around robotics at the moment, but no one solution will solve all of your problems. And there are some scenarios where you may not want to use robotics. So, for example, if you have very large, complex processes that span many departments, things like customer onboarding that may touch customer services, it may touch risk, it might touch finance, then you may look at a different solution, what we call BPM or full-blown process automation. If you have one-off or very low volume activities, we still need to make sure we can build a business case. We still need to make sure there's a good ROI. Robots may not be effective for that. Where you have work that's already being performed and you have APIs, you have systems already talking to other systems, you have pieces of technology in place to help manage the flow of work through an organization, robots may still have a part to play, but you may want to consider whether or not you're already duplicating efforts you've got in-house. And the big one that we see tends to be where you have IT systems, but the IT systems have planned changes. And, you know, for example, if you have an ERP today and you're replacing one of your finance systems with another finance system, the robot won't know the system has changed. So we need to make sure that the systems are stable and that there isn't too much unpredictable change. So just bear those things in mind when you're thinking about robots. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the features of robots. This is an introductory session, so I'm going to talk mainly about the core features. And what we mean when we say core features is what you get from a robot straight out the box. So if you took a robot and you installed it on a dedicated machine or you put it in the cloud, what you would find is it can deal with all of your desktop tools. So it can work with Excel, it can work with Word and Access, it can deal with any IT system which it can access from a desktop machine. So if you have Salesforce or Dynamics or another CRM, if you have a ticketing solution or a sales system, customer acquisition systems, it can work with all of those because it can read the same way that your people would what's actually happening on a desktop. What it does need is it needs to have its own user ID and password into every one of those IT systems that it needs to use. And in that way, it can work in exactly the same way that your staff will. Alongside those kinds of core features, many of the vendors, the RPA vendors, are also providing more sophisticated features, such as the ability to manage workload peaks and troughs, and allowing 24/7 or international operations, what they kind of call intelligent operations. I find personally a lot of customers want to incorporate cognitive, so the cognitive automation type features such as sentiment analysis or natural language processing, so we can pick up emails and understand, is it a complaint, is it a query, who do we need to forward it to, can we respond directly, and even OCR, which is optical character recognition, which means a robot could take a PDF. If somebody sends you an invoice in a PDF, it can read the PDF as if it was an email or another piece of digital data. The same with images. If you need to read things with a photographs, it's getting a lot better at that too. We're not going to go into a lot of detail about some of those more advanced features, but if you are interested, let us know and we can discuss these with you one-to-one. Okay, so we've had a very high-level tour. What I want to show you briefly is a video so you can actually see a robot running, because I always think it comes to life then. And this is actually a story of how we built a robot for our own internal use here at TImpact. It's a bit of a warts and all story, but it's a real-life situation where we built a robot to help us solve a real problem. And it revolves around marketing. So on a week-by-week basis, we receive about 100 to 150 applications per week from prospective customers and just general people who are interested in what we do. So we have people who come and they download white papers, they'll attend webinars, they attend our networking events, or they sign up to our newsletters. There's lots and lots of things we try and do to engage with the outside world. And sometimes that goes very well, and sometimes it's it might be our competitors who are coming to check out what we're doing. It could be students, which we're all up for, but they probably won't buy our services. And we just need to work through who are these people? Are they genuinely interested in us, or are we wasting their time by keeping in touch? So what we did is we currently go out and we pull all of our leads from our website, which you can see here is branded as Wix. We take those leads from Wix, we download them, and we start looking for whether or not this is a real person. And although it's not foolproof, a good measure of whether or not somebody's genuinely put in the right details is whether or not you can find them on LinkedIn. So we go on LinkedIn, we have a look, are they there, are they not there? And then we might go and try and find if there's any publicly available information, because we're all very aware of GDPR, but we can supplement with what we have today. Do we have a valid email address? Do they have a Twitter handle? Those kinds of things. Do we have the right job title? Now, once we've done that, we want to make sure that all those leads get updated to our Salesforce environment. So what I'm going to show you is how we manage that, because a few weeks ago, before we launched this fully, this really was a manual process with marketing teams sitting down and doing this. And this is what the process looked like today. Now, I'm not expecting you to read all of these little boxes, but what I would point out here is we have a color coding convention that we use when we draw process maps. Green means anything that a customer would willingly pay for because it's adding a lot of value. Orange means something that we need to do as a business for regulatory compliance or another reason. And red is anything that is highly manual, but is considered waste and therefore should be automated. So you can see this isn't exactly a perfect process and something that's an ideal candidate for automation. So we just built a robot. It took about 3 days to build the robot. And once we did, the process looked like this. So all the marketing team does now is they log into the solution and they run the solution, and it does all the work for them. So a lot of time off their plates, saving them hours and hours a week, and allowing them to get on with more important work. Right, so we've got the video here. Fingers crossed. So this is actually the video of the robot that I've just talked you through. You can see there's some words here just around what it's capable of doing. And a robot typically can operate 15 to 20 times faster than a person. So you'll see the robot collect information from our website. It'll go to LinkedIn and start adding data from there. It'll collect the information that it's got from the emails, and then it will load it into Salesforce. So what you're seeing now is a robot actually running in action. And if you look at the top right-hand corner, you can see a sign-in button and a little pop-up box. Every time you see that pop-up box, we've turned that on so that you can see what the robot is doing. So in this case, robots logging into Wix, which is our website, in exactly the same way as a person would. It's going in through the front end, using the user interface that a person would normally, so that it can go through all the data validation that your systems have put in place for very good reasons. If we go directly into the back end, that can cause problems, but it is possible. The robot then downloads the information. You can probably see the information was all TImpact people to protect the names of the innocent. It will take that information and create a database, and from that database it will start populating in additional information. So everybody loves LinkedIn, I'm sure. Some people more than others. So we log into LinkedIn and we start searching for the people in the list. Now, the first person that we found in the list was Keith. Keith's our CEO. So it searches for his name and his email address, and it found that there's only one person in that list, so it knows it's the right person. It can open up the contact information for Keith. You can see he has an email, he has a Twitter handle, it has a website for him, and that's all information that he's put in the public domain, and we can go and get that because it's been made available to us. Once the robot runs through, and typically it would run through a few dozen of these or a few hundred of these at a time, it then signs into our Office 365 account, which is just a cloud-based version of Microsoft Office. And it will go through and find the marketing folder where all of these leads have been stored for future reference. And what we're doing here is we're cross-referencing the information that we've taken from the website with what's in the emails, and we're looking at things like why did they get in touch? So you'll see in this folder that this is a robotics use case guide submission a lot. So a lot of people are actually downloading the use cases for robots to understand how they can help them. The robot can open up that information, it can read it through, can populate the database, because we want to make sure we're not missing anything important. The other thing that the robot will do here is it will actually mark each of these emails complete and move it to a separate folder. And by doing that, when the robot comes back next time, it only needs to look for the ones that are incomplete and therefore isn't duplicating any work. So we can be a bit smarter about how the robot actually operates and what it does by building business rules and business logic into the actual design of the robot. And then finally, the robot will log into Salesforce. And really what we're just demonstrating here is it can operate with any web-based application that you can throw at it, really. It doesn't matter to the robot if this is on your personal desktop or if it's through a virtual machine or Citrix or whatever you're using. The robot can read that information using its OCR capabilities. And then the robot simply populates all of the leads into Salesforce to complete the process. And apologies for the big white box, but protecting the names of the innocent, as I'm sure you appreciate. So we've just picked a couple here, but now let's see the robot operating at full speed, and you'll see the difference. So obviously quite significantly faster. The first time we went through this, it was running in debug mode, which is a slowed down version, so we could talk you through it. But you can see how quickly a robot can operate when you take the shackles off. So imagine if a robot goes through this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times compared to a person, the time difference can be quite staggering. Just a quick overview of some of the benefits that you can get. So the main reasons we see people look at robots: cost reduction, efficiency, and regulatory control. It may not be those for you, but you can normally get a combination of those things, which is very, very handy. Okay, so hopefully now you've got a decent overview of what a robot can do, what it can't do, and you've seen a robot in action. So I just want to talk you through very quickly what are some of the most common things that people ask us about, and it tends to be costs and timeline. So just before we get into this, just very quickly, I've got one more quick poll for you. And this is just get a feel for, well, how much do you think a robot will cost? So less than £20,000, £50,000, 80 to 100. You know, let me know what you think. This is interesting. Quick responses, appreciate that. 1 or 5 seconds. Okay. So, quite convincingly, a lot of people saying that you'd expect it to cost less than £20,000. Fair number of people saying 50,000, or some people saying 80 to 100,000. Really interesting. So I'll tell you a little bit more about this. So the actual answer is there really wasn't a wrong answer in the last poll. Depending on who you're talking to, they're all right actually. So you can see here what a typical robotics project might cost. These numbers, we haven't made these up. These have been provided by our customers, where they felt that robotics could add huge value to them, but didn't warrant an upfront cost of hundreds of thousands of pounds. And what they're telling us is, if you ask a Big Four consultancy, it's typically this is typically the price tag you can expect. You know, a starter pack might set you back about £350,000. They want a lot of licenses. There's a big services pack, and I think, to be fair, they typically go after for very, very big global organisations who probably feel that investment is warranted. A smaller niche firm might typically charge about £50,000 for a proof of concept. That's quite common actually. We see a customer recently told us they've been quoted £290,000 for a proof of concept because the vendor wanted a minimum of a 3-year deal. And that's a huge amount of money to put into something that you may not have ever done before. So it really is why we brought our subscription service to the market, because we believe that this should be achievable, and not just to the top 5 customers, not top 5 organisations in an industry. So what we do is we said, well, what would we want if it was our business? So we have a fixed setup fee for our robots that costs £7,500, and that provides you with everything you need to get a fully functional robot. Not a pilot, not a POC, but a full robot. And then we have a simply monthly subscription that starts at £1,750 per month, £1,750 a month. The minimum term that we ask for is only 3 months, and that basically allows us to break even. We believe that if we're open and transparent with you, you can really judge for yourself how this will provide value to your business, and hopefully by being cost effective, you'll come back to us and say, well, look, I've got this idea. I'm not sure if it will stack up, but we can work with you to understand how to hopefully make that happen. So this is just a general overview. You can find a lot more information about all of our robots and the costs on our website. We are maybe a little bit overly transparent sometimes. If anything doesn't make sense, call us. We're really happy to help. But this is a very, very common question that we get asked. The second one is, how long does it take? So hopefully by now you're getting the impression that robots don't need to be big, expensive projects. We typically deliver RPA projects in 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the complexity of what you're trying to achieve. The first step is typically always to run a workshop to ensure that everybody has a good basic understanding of robotics, how it can help the organization. We incorporate a large dose of change management into our approach, so you get all the information you need to get started. But we also make sure the right people are engaged to avoid any internal conflict. We typically run those workshops for a few £100s, or if you send us a purchase order, we normally do them for free. They take about 3 to 4 hours, but are quite impactful, and it gives you an implementation roadmap for your project. When we start a first project, the focus is really on delivering results quickly, generate a fast ROI, and our customers then get a couple of weeks to really test the robot. So they throw everything they can at it and try and break it. Any rework required is included at that stage, so you have a full opportunity to make sure that it's operational for you. And then once an ROI is established and your robot's fully live, we typically recommend an internal roadshow. This tends to get missed quite a lot, but it's great at demonstrating the benefit to stakeholders and really shouting about what you've achieved. It gives you a lot of emphasis for your next project, allowing you to scale up. And we find that is a big piece. When people start seeing what you're achieving, they may want to do the same thing and get the same level of benefits. Okay. So in summary then, robots are very popular. They deliver value quickly. Robot can be working up to 15 times faster than a person. They work 24 hours a day. So barring any system downtime, robots don't take holidays, they don't get tired, they don't make mistakes. And really what that means is, in a non-threatening way, you can deploy robots to work alongside your staff. The robots can perform the mundane, repetitive tasks and free up your staff to spend more time with customers. So you win more sales, or you simply focus on more strategic objectives. And in my experience, it's a very, very small number of organizations that are looking to use robots to make people redundant. It typically tends to be about increasing the capacity of their existing team, allowing them to do more, or to grow the business without having to hire more people. And that's a big change from what we've seen previously with bigger projects. Okay, before we get into Q&A, there are 3 quick things I just want to share with you. The first is that you can download a free copy of our 8-step guide to robotics by clicking on the link on the page, or by just simply Googling TImpact RPA guide. If you've liked this introduction to robotics, please do join us at our next Curry Club. We run these fairly regularly in and around London, not just in London. These are our most popular events. It's a really good opportunity for like-minded people to get together to discuss top topics and enjoy a beer and a curry. Our next event is taking place in 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about some of the more advanced concepts like cognitive and how to be disruptive with robotics. And finally, if you do want a one-to-one meeting or consultation, if you'd like to understand the use cases in your particular industry, please get in touch. You can email us, you can phone us. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, let's have a quick look at some of the questions that are coming through. So somebody's asked, what is the process involved in building a robot? So really good question. So one of the key things for us is understanding the business architecture and how we can actually piece together requirements for a robot. So we go through and we actually understand what are all of the steps that a robot needs to go through to successfully run this process. And before we've even designed and built the robot, we need to understand that. We need to understand all of the exceptions that may come with that, how a robot will operate when things don't go right, and we call that defensive programming. And by doing that, we can make sure that it operates right first time. That entire process can take 2 to 4 weeks. It's really not very long. Somebody's asked, what happens if a robot cannot complete a process? Similarly, we talked about how it handles exceptions. This is really, we work with you to understand, well, what do you want it to do when it runs into something unexpected? If the robot will always keep a log of what's happening, and it will handle exceptions in the way you want it to, which might mean pass an email out to somebody in the team, keep a log and send it out once a day or once a week, and it won't just fall over and stop working. It will move on to the next task. Another question just come in. Can a robot do more than one thing? Yes, it can. You can configure a robot to do multiple things, but it can only do one at a time. So if it's performing a task, it can't do 3 or 4 things in parallel, but it can do one thing, then move on to the next, then move on to the next. We typically say that you can do 3 or 4 things on a robot before you start running out of capacity. So that's a good guide to bear in mind. You mentioned legal firms. How are they using robots? So we are working with a few legal firms. I have to be careful about how much information I give away here, but typically we've seen them look at things like file opening, data cleansing for case management and CRM systems, GDPR, and processing simple mirrored wheels are very popular. So those kinds of things where they may not have ever had a process for doing simple mirror wheels in the past, but robots will allow them to do that. Okay, one last question is, we have an in-house workflow solution, why would we use RPA? Really good question. So workflow typically will dictate the work that needs to be completed, but doesn't necessarily complete the work. What a robot will do is actually work in tandem with a workflow solution and perform the activities that your staff are doing at each step. So we can actually pick up those repetitive admin tasks and leave a more complex work for humans. And that's really where a lot of the value is coming from, not in trying to replace what you already have today. Okay, so I think we're just about out of time there. If anyone does have any other questions, please do get in touch. We'll send out a link to this presentation. Hope it's been insightful for you. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for your time. Speak to you soon.